Hey, this is Dr. Young. This is College Success Ed 099, Bossier Parish Community College Open Campus. This is a supplemental video for Modules 6 and 7. We're going to be looking at reading and marking textbooks. I wanted to show you an example of how we would go through, preview a chapter, and then highlight it and mark it for preparation, taking a test. So we're going to go over to the document stand and take a look. I have here a copy of a history book. I don't teach history, but I feel a little comfortable with this chapter. This is from Western Civilization, which here on our campus is History 102. This is at the very beginning of the semester, and they're focusing on the Protestant Reformation. So I'm looking through my brand new textbook. You'll notice it's white, doesn't have any markings in it. And in previewing it, I'm just going to mark a few things as I go through that I want to pay particular attention to. So as we see here, because it's a history class, I'm going to be a little concerned about dates. So you'll notice right here we have dates where a person was in power, or this was actually the length of Martin Bucer's life. So I think that's an important date. Then down a little further here we have 1529 is when the Marburg colloquy was called. So I'm thinking that might be a question the history teacher may ask on the test, so I'm marking that. And then as I look through the rest of the textbook here on this page, I notice we're talking about still the Reformation, but this is a new kind of Reformation. It's a radical Reformation, and kind of introducing a new word here, the Anabaptists. I have no idea who those people are, so I've kind of drawn an arrow there that tells me I may need to know a little bit more about this. And then in this next section here, the heading is the ideas of the Anabaptists. Well, I got to tell you, the first thing that jumps in my mind is how many ideas did they have? And as I look here and number down the page, every time I see a new one, I'm putting another number, and wow, we're up to 9 ideas that they had. So this is my preview of this page. So then let me give you an example just before we turn to a new page, how I might highlight this page. Just to give myself some more information. Notice the highlighting does not include the entire page. It's very focused on things. So over here in this first column, I have highlighted the political leaders that were working at that time, and I have added an underline of this fellow's name, Landgrave Philip. I did not see that name as I was previewing the chapter, so I've underlined that. He might be important. And then down here, here's in the Marburg colloquy, what seemed to be, as I read through, what I seem to think was an important factor in their discussion was whether or not the Lord's Supper represented the actual presence of the body of blood of Christ. So that is actually what the argument was about. So I'm thinking that sounds like a test question to me, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. Then over here, the Radical Reformation with the Anabaptists. Remember when we previewed, I wasn't sure who those folks were, but here it tells us in this paragraph exactly who that group of people were, so that now I have an answer to that question, and it's right there in my textbook. Then notice we're at that paragraph again, the idea of the Anabaptists, and you know, I would go back and forth here. There are 9 of them. If I highlighted that, I would have highlighted that entire column on the page, and that's a whole lot of highlight. And when I'm studying for the test, I'm just going to be overwhelmed by that amount of highlighting. So for my preparation for the test, I would not highlight where the numerical values were, but I would make a list and maybe put it in here on a Post-it note or on a file card so that I could easily study that. But you will notice that a little further down the page there, I did find something that I thought was important enough to highlight that distinguished the Anabaptists from Catholics and other Protestants or Reformers at the time. So you can see it's a individualized kind of process to do that. So I want us to look at another page as we go through. I'm going to look at the next page in the textbook, and we can see what needs highlighted there. So let's go back to the document stand, and we're going to flip over to the next page, and it looks like we're still talking about the Reformation. And look, it's an entire page of text. There's no charts, there's no graphs. There is just a whole lot of information here. So let's see what we might have in store for us here. Well, if we noticed, we're talking about the Reformation in England here. You've noticed I have drawn an arrow there, so I'm probably going to want to pay attention to that when I'm reading. Again, we've got lots of dates and things that I have underlined, but let me draw your attention here to, there's a word in bold, militarism. I'm not sure what that is, and not being a history person, militarism. I'm going to have to look that up. And you'll notice this page does not come with any vocab, so I am going to have to look that up. Or when I'm reading, pay attention to make sure that that definition is there. So what I have put in my textbook when I'm marking is a question mark, so I pay attention to that. Again, lots of dates on this page, so we'll want to pay attention to those. So in highlighting, I switched to yellow for this page, and you can see the difference that it makes, whether it's yellow or pink or blue. The color doesn't matter as much as how well you can see the highlighting. If it's too harsh on your eyes, it might make it difficult to read. But then again, if it's so faint you can't see it, well, it made very little sense to highlight. So let's go back to the document stand. And here we have up at the top of the page a whole lot of information still about what's happening in Europe with the Reformation. But let's go down to my real question here about who these folks were. These were in Germany. They're a type of Anabaptist. It does tell me that. And they were, they're using some harsh words here, wild-eyed variety known as Melchiorites who adhered to a vivid millenarianism. They're millennialists. They believe the end of the world will come at the end of one of the millennium. Okay, so now I know who they are, and it did have it in there in the book. So notice what I have written here in the textbook. I have written DEF, that's kind of my abbreviation for definition, so it tells me that this vocab word does have a definition here in the text, and I don't have to keep looking it up. But as I was reading through and highlighting, I have come across some people's names that I thought were pretty important, along with some dates that I didn't notice on the first pass through. So in this paragraph, I've highlighted about Dutch Anabaptists, and it seems that there were a lot of them, all different places. And these ones were named, they followed the work of this fellow named Mino Simmons, and he was rejuvenated, the Dutch Anabaptist, so I'm going to probably need his name. You know what, I'm not sure, but I'll ask the teacher, so I've underlined that to make a note of that. And then the textbook switches from Europe to England, and I do know that that's part of Europe, but it's not on the main continent of Europe. So Reformation in England tells me in the very first sentence that it was initiated by King Henry VIII, and it gives some of the history there. Oh, I do like the way this book gives some of the phonetic pronunciations of these difficult words. Anne Boleyn, it tells me how to pronounce her name. But then look in the next paragraph here, it's talking about 2 new advisors to the king, and their names were Thomas Cranmer and Thomas Cromwell. Wow, that's 2 Thomases. I may have to make a note. Be sure to be able to tell those Thomases apart. And as I continue down the page, I keep highlighting. Oops, down here at the bottom, it looks like I found another name that I'm thinking I'm going to need to know. Oh no, it's another Thomas. So for me, if I had 3 Thomases in one column, in one section, I'm going to make a flashcard or some kind of file note there to keep the 3 Thomases apart. So there are many things you can do as you're highlighting and reading through your textbook to help you study your notes. I also recommend that you read your textbook prior to going to class. That way, when your teacher is using words like Zwingli or Cranmer or Mino Simmons, you'll at least have some idea how to spell them and not have to completely depend on spelling them phonetically. I want us to take one more moment and look at one more page in our history book and see what other things we can find to help us. So we're going to switch to the next page in our textbook here. Oh look, at least we have an image on this page. That's John Calvin, who I'm taking was probably another one of these reformer guys. Oh look, he's right there, John Calvin and Calvinism. So I've drawn an arrow to that. There's a lot of people's names in this. I might have to think of a way to remember all their names. That sounds like flashcard city to me. John Calvin and Calvinism, I've underlined some dates. We have another thing down here. John Calvin had some ideas. So I've written there, how many ideas did he have? And again, we've numbered them just the same way we did with the other ones. 1, 2, 3. But oh look, here's another word that's a vocab word. I'm wondering if the definition is provided there. The word is predestination. So I've put out beside there a definition. I need that. And as I'm reading, just glancing down this page, I noticed that Calvin was identified as having 3 tests. 3 tests. He's got 3 tests. So I've kind of put a question mark out here by the side, wondering what these 3 tests of Calvin is. So after my preview and I'm ready to go back and read through my chapter, I take my highlighter and I'm going to highlight those pages. So as we go through the chapter and look at these things, and as I was reading, I noticed in quotation marks over here the phrase Bloody Mary. Well, that's an eye catcher. So I'm going to want to find out about that, and that's what I have highlighted here. Then we switch over to Calvinism, or John Calvin. His name is underlined. He's in the 2nd generation of Protestant reformers. And it occurs to me, I'm not really sure what that means, so I may make a note to ask the teacher, what does the 2nd generation of Protestant reformers mean? So as we look down here at Calvinism, I do note, remember we talked about Calvin's ideas down here at the bottom. So I've highlighted some of his ideas, but notice he's very close to Luther. And I do remember we talked about Luther very early in the semester, so I can make a link between Calvin and Luther. And then over on the other page, there's that word predestination that I wasn't sure about. And in fact, they do give a definition of predestination, so that helps me there. And remember, as in my preview, I noted there were 3 tests that might indicate possible salvation. Well, they do indeed give those, and I have highlighted those there. So that's a quick look at how to highlight and preview your textbook. Remember, we preview first, making quick notes and asking questions, and then we go back and highlight on our second read through. I hope this little example has given you some assistance in reading and marking your textbooks. Have a great day.